The idea of building a business that can have the leader ultimately transition a new leader in doesn't then skip a beat. That's keep a great business. It's a key great leader. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm trying to build, and what I've been trying to build even over the last 10 years, is I'm trying to build this self-sustaining company that isn't beholden to some external private equity cycle, just to be frank, that we as doctors maintain the quality of the business itself, and it's self-sustaining so that young doctors graduating can buy in. They can have their own equity. Okay. They can, we can grow to a space where we can decide to keep growing or not grow. And then I become less relevant. Mm-hmm. To be honest, it allows me to then say, okay, you know what? I've built something that's going to continue on. And it's not about it continuing on for my legacy, but for the legacy of why you built it. Like you raise your kids so that they'll go off in the world and be good and do good work for the world. Mm-hmm. Like I want to build a business that can go off and continue doing great work once I'm gone. And I think it's not so that my name can be on it and I can say, oh, what a great leader he was. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what you're building. And so for me, I just think that's the art of trying to build something great. And so that's the goal.
My name is Ibrahima Abraham Cisse, host of Heliona Insights and founder and chief empathy officer at Heliona, a workplace wellness, culture, and engagement company purpose-built to maximize well-being, productivity, and retention for SMBs and mid-market organizations. Our mission is simple yet powerful: to transform workplaces by socializing mental health at work. Each episode dives into meaningful conversations with leaders, experts, and change makers, exploring strategies that create healthier, more connected, and resilient work environments. Building a thriving business isn't just about strategy or growth. It's about creating a culture that empowers people, embraces innovation, and inspires long-term success. My guest today, Dr. Jeremy Fry, embodies all of these principles and more. As the owner and CEO of Fry Orthodontics and Catalyst Dental Partners, Jeremy has scaled his organizations from a 3-office practice to a 23-office business, spanning 4 states, achieving a 7x revenue increase in just 12 years. But his impact goes far beyond the numbers. Jeremy is passionate about fostering a culture of empowerment, professional growth, and continuous learning, grounded in principles like Kaizen and systems management. In this episode, we will dive into Jeremy's journey as a leader, entrepreneur, and innovator, from creating mentorship programs like Young Orthodontists to building businesses across multiple industries. Jeremy's story is one of resilience, vision, and purpose. Get ready for an inspiring conversation packed with actionable insights on leadership, culture, and long-term growth. I'm a little bit biased because my wife, works in the dental industry. So I do get a lot of insight. Before we get into the questions, I want to talk about your recent trip to Hong Kong.
Sure.
Initially spoke to you and you shared that you were on your way to Hong Kong. I believe it was 3 a.m.
Yes.
And then you're like, this is my excuse for staying up.
That's right.
And then I was like, oh, wow, I don't really have a really good excuse. I'm just here researching people. I'm very curious about your trip to Hong Kong. And if you don't mind sharing, what was the trip about and why was it important for you personally?
Yeah. Well, Abraham, first of all, I've listened to many of your conversations and you do such a great job of bringing people out, letting them talk about themselves, and such accomplished people. I'm scratching my head thinking, what in the world am I doing here? Who wants to hear about dentistry and this guy from Kansas that runs orthodontic practices? But I'm very grateful to be here. And the trip to Hong Kong was a part of an MBA program that I'm taking right now at 47 and with a couple of businesses and feeling like I was at a spot where professionally I should be feeling good. I felt like I needed something more. And in dentistry, we don't get a lot of business training. You end up coming out of school and working in a business or running a business and don't really have a lot of background in finance or HR or, you pick your thing, marketing. And so for me, I felt like I just needed something to fill in the blanks with some of that academic work. Right. And so I applied to a couple of schools, ended up at Kellogg Northwestern and getting their executive MBA. actually at their Miami campus. It sounds pretty fun.
Especially right now.
Yeah, right. Well, because it's cold. But Miami, the Miami campus, it only meets once a month, which is more convenient travel-wise as opposed to the Chicago campus. And the interesting thing about that is there's a lot of international influence that comes through there because there's a lot of, since it's once a month, there's a lot of those from South America and Central America that come up to Miami for that. So it's been a really great cultural experience for me to be there. And one of the cultural experiences that Kellogg offers at the kind of the tail end of your MBA program is that you can take the different electives that they offer. And one of those electives was in Hong Kong. And I had no real interest in going to Hong Kong. I don't have an interest in doing business in that part of the world, but I thought, what better time would I have to go except for to go take classes? And so I went over there and took some classes for about a week, and it was a lot like work. I mean, it was in classes most of the day, so I didn't do a lot of sightseeing, but it was I loved the people. I love just the cultural difference, and really as a kind of an idiot American, it was kind of nice to be there and see that there's other ways of doing things other than what we do, and it was a good cultural experience for me. So I was really happy to be there.
No, yeah, I'm someone who traveled a lot, so I always recommend people to travel, especially when it comes to your MBA program. You know, and I'm glad that you wanted to go do something because even though you've accomplished a lot, but you still feel like you have to go and do something else, which is really good. Now you're experiencing all these other experiences.
Well, I appreciate you saying it. I think we all need to consistently think about how we can grow, how we can learn, how we can become better versions of ourselves, and in all aspects. But that in business, I felt like I needed it, and it's been good. I actually have been just shocked at the things I thought I knew really well and the things that I thought I needed to know. I'm not sure that I'm totally filling my mind with everything I thought that I would need to learn, but I definitely learned that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, and some things I thought I knew. So it's been a good experience to have done it, and graduate in June, and I feel it's just interesting being a student again and having finals, and it's different, but it's been a good experience for the people and the networking, if nothing else. But the coursework's been great as well, and it's a great program. I mean, Kellogg Northwestern is one of the best in the world, and the Hong Kong business school with Kellogg that we were at was just rated number 1 in the world. So it was a really special educational experience to be there.
Right. No, I talked to a lot of leaders, and I noticed that they're all gravitating to Asia, as far as education or opportunities. So yeah, I think your head is in the right place.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you saying. Well, and I'm actually doing another one in March. I'm going down to South Africa, so I'm going to your continent.
Okay, there you go.
I'm really excited to go for 2 weeks there. And my sister lived in Africa for almost her entire adult life. She's back stateside now, but she lived in Kenya for a while, and so I've actually been to Kenya, but I haven't been to South Africa. So I'm really excited to go there and learn about African culture down south, and so that'll be another fun experience through Kellogg.
That'll be a huge experience for sure. Because I've lived in the West for a very long time now, and lately I've been thinking about, all right, I need to go back because I'm tired of the cold. Number one,
that's right. I know.
It's a big thing for me, and now that we're in December, I'm just oh, this is so hard.
The pole's gonna be there.
It's gonna be so cold. But yeah, so as a leader, and especially someone who's worked, you've mainly worked in the dental industry. That's what you do. But I'm curious to understand as to why do you think it's important for leaders like yourself to want to go and learn again? Because as an entrepreneur myself, I am in this space where entrepreneurs are always learning. We're always learning, but it comes to a point where we just stop. We're all right, we've accomplished all this. Now we're going to take a break. But you being someone who's you know what, I'm not done. I'm going to go back to school and then, get my MBA, but also have all these experiences.
Well, at the end of the day, I think what it forces you to do is to have some humility about yourself. And if there's anything that I want to try and emulate is a leader that is not all-knowing, and is someone who really, leadership to me is more I like the idea of the servant leader, and a lot of people are talking about that now, but the servant leader is really somebody that looks at your team and figures out ways to synergistically help people grow within your company or your whatever endeavor that you're a leader within, and to also not only provide the opportunities for people to grow and learn and become who they who they want to be, but also to recognize that from the humble perspective that I need to constantly grow as well. And I need to understand that I don't know everything, and understand that there's not just say in dentistry or orthodontics, but say parenting or spousal relationships or academic work of MBA programs. I think for me, I believe that I needed something that I wasn't. I didn't have enough. Well, I have a strong ego. All of us have egos that are either leaders, entrepreneurs, whatever. Right. But it required me to just check myself and just say, you know what, there's a lot here I don't know. And going back, I think has been it's highlighted that for me. It's all about humility and gratitude, to be honest. I mean, you got to be grateful for where you are, to know that you got to get better and go somewhere else. And so anyway, that's my answer to, I guess, leadership and going back and continue to check yourself and learn and grow. And I think people see that, and people see that I'm not at a stage of my career where I'm just going to coast and just lean on what I've learned in the past. And they, I think, can be inspired by that, and it forces them to want to grow. And through that, you can take that into business and help as people grow within your organization, both personally and professionally. I think it makes your company or your organization or your team better. Right.
No, like even to your point, I work with a lot of healthcare workers, and then also, my wife works in the dental industry, and every now and then she'll ask for my opinion on things. And one thing that I always pick up is like communication is a big problem. Because to your point earlier, you mentioned that a lot of dentists don't have like a lot of training. They just know what they do. Right. But when it comes to management, there's a huge lack when it comes to leadership. Yeah. And one of the things that she always shares with me is like lack of communication. No one is hearing, each other. But what I'm hearing as someone who works in this industry is like, there's sometimes almost 5 to 6 generations working in the same workplace. And, there's no structure as far as how to, navigate that space. There's no like middle management. There's no one in between, the owner and also the rest of the, like the assistant. So there's always that conflict of like, like interest. Number one, there's a conflict in like communication. Yeah. So one person is thinking this is happening, the other person is thinking that is happening, and they're all reading the owner wrong. Right. And every now and then, she would share things with me, and I would look up the owner. They have great reviews online. Right. So customer facing, they're killing it. Right. But internally, everything is corroding.
Well, it's an interesting observation. I think part of this kind of stems from how dentists are created, and fortunately for me, I had just a wonderful dad who was an orthodontist, and my parents are still married 55 years, and they set such a great example for me as a human, but also I looked up to my dad in the dental space. And my dad had kind of this entrepreneurial gene that most dentists at the time really didn't have. And so I was, my dad grew up really, really poor, and he vowed that he wanted to make a better life for his family than what he had. And so his driver through all of his career in life has really been to try to build a business that could make enough money to satisfy that for him. And going through that, I was the 8-year-old being drugged through financial seminars to, because that was our family vacations, going to, places where he would be learning things to make his life better and the business better. And so I was raised that way. And when I got to the point where it was time to think about school, dental school, undergraduate prior to that, what I learned was that it really is all about, to get into dental school is all about academics. Right. They want to say it's maybe other stuff, service and whatever else people do put on their resume, but really it's at its core, it's a hardcore academic requirement to get in. And so you have to be pretty book smart, and you got to be confident enough to go and read something, be able to regurgitate it. And so it produces people who typically are fairly bright, who regurgitate facts, but who a lot of times don't think outside of the box. They don't think outside of the box of what they've been told. Right. And we're never told anything about how to deal with people that are working with us alongside us in the patient environment. And so you end up graduating, and then you're immersed next in this office, whether you own it, whether you're working for another group, whatever. and you don't know really how to interact because all you've really interacted with is other dental students.
Right.
And so you talk to your staff like you would other dental students, and you use terms that are maybe more medical terms because it makes you feel a little smarter, and that's what you know, and you want to show off you're a doctor. And I think that having seen my dad grow his business through kind of dismantling some of that hierarchical component of it, and there's a lot that can be unpacked there that I think I'd love to at some point, but I think that it's about, and it's not just with the staff and the team, but it really is also about patience. Like if I start talking to patients about tip and torque of teeth, I mean, they get lost and then they think that I'm trying to be too smart. Like you need to talk to them like they they'll understand you. And I'm not the brightest guy. I mean, I had to work really hard to get through, but I wasn't my skill set. I wasn't a read the book and then regurgitate a guy. I was a little bit more of the why. Okay, why is that? And so because of that, it forced me down different rabbit holes that I think in school was kind of sucked, to be honest with you, because I didn't get the greatest grades. But then after I got out, I think it was an interesting skill that's helped us collectively kind of build up a bigger team and allow people to grow within that team by just kind of dismantling the ego and just saying, okay, we're all here trying to do the same thing, and it doesn't matter whose name is on the door or whether I'm an owner or just what associate doctor, whatever my title is. We're all doing this together. There's people there's people on my team that could have been dentists and they're working as dental assistants and they're just as smart as any of our doctors, but they for some reason decided whether just life didn't facilitate that, and so we should treat them like their peers. I mean, they are like there's just no reason to not do that. And so I think dismantling some of that is very important. So
and I think the fact that you are always asking why, that's what makes you a great entrepreneur first, and then you bring so much value to into your industry, which I think it's lacking a lot. But like hearing you speak, and now I'm thinking maybe it's like a curriculum problem during the before you become a dentist. Like, is there anything that's happening as far as like prepping a dentist, someone who may become a dentist in the future? Is there like some kind of curriculum to help them maybe have some management skills?
They're trying. The problem is that dental schools, just institutions of higher learning, whether it's med school, I don't know a lot about medical school, but I know dental school. Right. They just don't make a lot of money, and there's a lot of information that they have to shove into these 4 years of dental school that they have to produce people that can go out and pass dental exams to get the dental license so they can practice. Right. So that means number one, they gotta train you as a dentist. Yeah. So there's only a finite amount of time in that curriculum to ultimately make a good dentist. Right. But then now I went to dental school at the University of North Carolina. I love the Tar Heels. I went to undergraduate there as well. Grew up in Kansas City. I love Kansas City. Obviously this is my home, but my second home is North Carolina, and so I go back and I'm actually on the Dean's Advisory Board there, and we talk a lot about this. There's a program that was created by a doctor out there, Richard Hunt, who it's called Think Big, and it brings Stephen Covey's habits into the curriculum there last year, and then it ends right before graduation with these fourth year dental students with a lot of more of a deep dive into that. I come out and speak about financial peace and getting out of debt and living within your means and stuff that they don't hear about. That shouldn't be in the dental school curriculum. That should be in the elementary school curriculum. How to make sure you spend less than you make, and
don't take that credit card.
and important money stuff. Kind of Dave Ramsey type philosophy, and then there's others that talk about leadership and conversation among your team. So there's things out there that people are trying to do in the dental schools, but it's not great, and I'm not sure how to solve that. I think there's a curriculum problem that's way earlier.
It's but just overall, there's a curriculum problem in like education. I do appreciate the fact that there's so much like specialized industries within the dental industry, just due to how complicated the human body is, which is good. And another thing that I notice is like when it comes to like burnout, it's a huge problem in the dental industry. And that could be the fact that people within the dental industry, they enjoy doing what they do, and they burn themselves out, but they it's really hard for them to realize that they're being burnt out. It's usually I'm doing this because I want to do it. So which tells me that is a problem when it comes to most dental people within the industry tend to identify with things that they do to their own detriment. So is there something that you've experienced? Maybe you have some tips as to like how were you able to realize, okay, maybe I'm putting my entire identity on this, which you touched on earlier about identity.
Well, I think let's take the doctor out of it for a second, because I think that's maybe a separate, it's not separate, but let's talk about just the team for a sec.
Right.
So I said, when my dad was kind of this entrepreneurially minded dentist, back in the 70s, 80s, it was a very hierarchical, there was a gender divide there, where most of the assistants were women, most of the doctors were men. And there was a social problem within that as well. And one of the things that I watch, and I have people, my COO just retired. She had been with our business for 40 years. So she was with my dad during this time. And I hear her talk about what my dad did during those years of empowering women for the betterment of women. And it sounds maybe a little bit, I don't know, maybe overly dramatic, but it's true when instead of just saying, okay, well, go do this, go do this as the doctor to the team. If you say, what do you think? And what are your thoughts on this? Let's collaborate. Let's talk about, this patient is here in the chair. Here's where we are in treatment. Here's when they want to get their braces off. What do you think the next steps should be? Right. And by empowering your team at whatever level they are and allowing them to be crass, use their brain as opposed to just being an automaton for what the doctor might want. Right. They become more engaged, and that burnout is less because they're constantly learning. And again, kind of it dismantles the ego of the doctor, which I think is a good thing. And it actually provides better care because it's not just one person's eyes on a problem. It's multiple people's eyes, regardless if they're a doctor or not, but just collaborating with where the treatment should go. So I think that when you talk about a team and growth within a team, that I think should at least prevent a lot of that stagnant burnout that can happen by just doing the same thing over and over again. Right. And so with the team, I believe that. I don't think it's that different with the doctor. For me, what I realized, and this is probably much longer story, but when I graduated, it was around 2006, and had joined my dad's practice, and he had 3 offices at the time. And I got to a spot about 2009 where I was really content. Like I was happy. We had 3 offices. My dad had pretty well retired at the time. He was involved in some of the leadership stuff. He was still kind of not training, but kind of helping mentor me into the leadership role that he and I both talked about a lot. And we were cruising, like things were great. And I had this balancing dilemma, which was, on one hand, there's contentment, which seems, which is I think missing in a lot of things. We are always striving for the latest and greatest, and so being content is rare. And I was feeling content, but I also was kind of wrestling with this idea: should I be chasing some kind of something else and some ghost? And it could, on the extreme, it could be chasing a ghost, and on the other extreme, it's just growing for growth, right? And so 2009, I really believed I was at the spot where I was content, and I was just gonna do that for the rest of my career, 3 offices, and just be there for my team and helping do what we had already done. Right. And what I learned about myself during that process is that I actually voiced that openly to a lot of my peers. And this is around the time when dentistry started to have an influx of groups coming in, to the private equity groups. There was some big money being thrown into dentistry. There was a lot of consolidation of dentists kind of coming together and growing these bigger practices. And that was really my dad's vision of what he was trying to build back before it was the cool thing to do. Right. And I'm sitting here kind of content and seeing this happen on this, being on the sidelines and thinking, do I want to go there? Do I not want to go there? Am I happy? Am I content? Am I not? And I voiced that I was content to my colleagues. I'm good. I think it's going to take too much work, honestly, to do that. And I got home from this meeting where I vividly remember talking with my friends about this, and I wasn't settled. I didn't really understand why at the time, but knowing myself now better than I did back then, what was happening was I believed that I wasn't a good steward of what my entrepreneurial dad had created if I just kind of rode his coattails into my retirement. Right. Morbidly, if I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking over the course of my life and how did I live my life, and did I take advantage of all the opportunities? Did I challenge myself? I would have looked and probably said no. Like I
Right.
was doing good work. I was treating patients well. Our treatments were great, but I decided at that point around 2010 that it was time to grow. And so as we started that path, happened really interestingly, very rapidly. It's interesting that whole part of from 2010 to really even now, there's been a lot of interesting changes there. But I learned that I'm a builder and I love building things. I love building companies. I love building people. I love building my family, my kids. I love my wife. I love building something together with her. And I love building on, we've talked about the MBA program, building on my knowledge. And so I like building things. And so for me, to avoid being stagnant and kind of at that spot you were asking about, was really all about understanding yourself and knowing, okay, well, for me, where I'm going to get fulfillment is by growing something in a way maybe nobody's done before. And that's exciting. And it's the successes and failures that come with it. And there's been both. and the failures actually can be more fun because you can look back and say, man, that was dumb, but I learned. And so I don't do it again, So I think that it's again, knowing yourself and being able to go on that trajectory that you need to do for you, whether that's a team member or a doctor. And that's kind of where we are now.
Right. No, and by the way, thank you for sharing that, by the way. That gives me so much questions. So hopefully,
sure.
I'm going off scripts, guys.
Well, you're the same way. So I want to know, because you're building something right now. I mean, you're building something great and you're doing this for the betterment of people, right? And this Chief Empathy Officer, I love the title. But you have to feel the same way. You've built something and you recently changed the name. You've noticed kind of these. And some of those things are the struggles of business, but the struggles can also be beautiful, and they can lead you to where your ultimate path should be.
No,
what do you feel about
No,
that?
yeah. And by the way, thanks for that question, because it's something that I just talked about on my 10 a.m. meeting. One of the reasons why I even, did the rebrand from Freedom Project to Heliona and even built this podcast is, number one, there's a huge lack of trust when it comes to providers and like venture capitalists. In the mental health space, a lot of therapists are against working with the venture capitalists. It's becoming a huge thing on LinkedIn. Everyone is talking about it, and even the media is picking it up now. Therapists don't want to sit on the sideline anymore. They need something to like protect them, maybe a coalition or a group that is for the interests of the therapists. And the healthcare workers, the mental health group, providers. And I do want to get your point on that, because I know like one of your entities is focused on bringing together all the, dentists and create an entire support system for them. But for me personally, Heliona is designed to be a space where all of these, like providers and like therapists can have a space where, their voice kind of will be the foundation of everything that we do. Yeah. So I have a therapist that I work with now, and I have a doctors from KU that I also work with. So all of those different, like assets and individuals, they bring different perspectives where, no matter what we do, foundationally, we have these individuals that are experts in a community or like a society of like everyone is against experts, but then the industry is just taking advantage of them.
How does that interaction happen with the VC component? Because you said that there's the venture capital is maybe looked down upon in that. Are you trying to marry the two, or by building a strong coalition of the doctors and the therapists and all this at the base being the foundation? Right. Is the idea to bring in VCs and ultimately then grow that, and that's maybe more appealing than VC starting something and then trying to is that
exactly? Yeah. So one of the biggest thing that I keep hearing, especially with the therapists that I work with, because I do have a huge community of therapists that I just jump on calls with, and I just want to hear and then learn from them, because I have opportunity to actually become a therapist, but I decided not to. Again, too much learning. Yeah. So now I become a listening device for them and just consume as much as I can. And what I'm hearing is that normally they don't even care if there's a VC involved. They just want to be represented during the decision making. They want to make sure that they don't hear some startup saying we just raised $150 million, but they're paying their best like clinicians or therapists like $60K a year. And then they're paying some developer almost $300K with equity. So it's like, but we're the one building the company. We're the one showing up for your customers, but we don't get a voice. So my goal with everything I do, even with the media company that I've established called Forum, is designed to be a space where they can number one, just be the people telling the stories, writing those articles. So I currently have a lot of doctors and therapists that write for Forum Insider, which is kind of like the media aspect of it. Just putting out stories of what's happening in the industry instead of letting for people that have no connection, no expertise, and sometimes a lot of misinformation happen in that space. And now they're being devalued, they're not paying properly, and they're not represented. And they genuinely don't like it when they hear a startup say, we just raised $150 million. Now we're valued at $4 billion. And they're like, yo, you can't even pay me $70K. I'm like,
exactly.
What am I supposed to do?
Yes, I understand. It's not that dissimilar what's going on in dentistry. And the dental components are, there is a divide with those that, let me back up. So in the dental world, say circa before 2000, there were groups that had some money behind them, whether it's PE or venture capital, but most doctors would sell their practice to other doctors. And there was an owner doctor component of almost every sale that would happen in our space. And that had a value. You kind of knew what the value of a practice was. And you'd have big practices, small practices. You'd have people that want to come out and not be able to buy because they just got out of school, and then they take out loans. But there was, when student loans started to get so high, students coming out really couldn't afford to take out another $1 million loan or whatever it would be to buy a practice. And so what ended up happening was there's a lot of cash flow that can come out of a dental practice that's run efficiently. So private equity started to come in, and as private equity came in, it increased the value of these practices by a lot. And so they really took over very fast. And so there's this large group of consolidating private equity backed groups. They're called DSOs, dental support organizations, that really have capitalized on the student debt component of young doctors coming out that could really just have to come and work to pay off their debts at a certain level. They'll really get no equity. And so that can be good, and it can also be bad. And I think that the perception nowadays, with interest rates having gone up the last couple of years, a lot of these private equity groups are really not doing well. And so and some of them are failing. The good ones are not, but most of them are struggling. And so there's this now divide of, okay, well, where do we go from here? We've increased the values of these practices. Young people still have the student debt. They can't really buy. So what model can be created? What you've done is you've kind of essentially tried to create a new kind of parallel universe of the VC world that divide you were talking about, where they're trying to do all this, get all this money to come in and start up these groups. You're doing it from kind of scratch. And it's very similar to what we're trying to do. We're trying to get doctors, all specialists within dentistry, to, instead of doing the private equity route, let's create a joint venture model where we have the foundation of a service business that can help you do the stuff that honestly most doctors don't want to do. So a lot of the HR functions, a lot of the finance functions, maybe training and leadership development, things that we can bring that we've learned over the years through our company Catalyst Orthodontic Group, and transition that, instead of it being a service group for just orthodontists, let's do it for dentists and other specialists. And let's come together. Like, let's figure out a way where everybody's value of their practice can increase. And instead of being beholden to the turn of private equity and having really no good reason to continue to grow your practice, your same office practice, because you've already got paid for your business, you don't really own it, and you're just kind of working for the man. Like, let's all work together. Let's get some alignment. And I think that alignment is missing. And and I think it's the same in dentistry as it sounds like it may be for mental health specialists. And
absolutely,
it's an interesting parallel.
No, I mean, I do agree with that, because at the end of the day, I feel like in the dentistry, it's so hard to compete with other dentists, because people are normally in severe pain. It's like their immediate action is to just get care. It's like, I'm sure there's some form of competition there, but what you were doing, is, just creating a space where they can, be able to have conversations and keep collaborating, because at the end of the day, there's a huge collaboration in dentistry. For example, someone who does bracelet would recommend someone to go do I don't remember all the terms.
No,
my
you're
wife's
right.
gonna kill me.
Somebody, the pediatric dentist is a specialist, and they may refer to the orthodontist, and you may have, an endodontist does root canals, and some dentists do root canals, but some more complex ones the endodontists do. But it also goes back to your mental health side of this and burnout, because if you have, think about how potentially, let's say you're a single doctor, one practice, not very many staff members, say 3 or 4 staff members. This is a typical dental office, at least typical before. It can get really lonely. Like, I mean, who are you? Who are your colleagues? You know, you're competing against the guy down the road or the gal down the road, and you maybe have your dental school classmates that live wherever, and you can maybe ping them, but there's just not a good group of people that are providing that mental health support for you as a doctor, but also for the team. And so if we can bring that together, not only can we kind of coalesce on the financial end of it and the services to provide something that may be better on that end of it, and treatment norms, and making sure that we have quality care the way that needs to be, all that stuff that is the nuts and bolts of running a dental practice, but then also the emotional side. Like, think about how powerful it would be if you have people that are your partners that you're talking to all the time, that they're helping you, they're fulfilling you, and some of them are going to have interests that are going to align, and they go do fun stuff, trips together, or it helps with that mental health side of it too. And I just think that there is something there that's really been missing.
Absolutely.
And it's there a little bit in the group practice arena. In group practices with multiple owners, it works, but the private equity one is hard because it's kind of a revolving door doctor. As a patient, you go into this office and you might see a different doctor all the time, and they're not owners, and they don't really no interest in staying, and they're working for their paycheck, and that's not bad. That's what most of our team is that way, but it's harder to really get that buy-in as a patient that this person is my dentist. They care about me, and they have that relationship with me, and that's really at Fry Orthodontics what we've been trying to build is this idea that we have a lot of offices, but our philosophy, one of our values, is to have the sophistication of a bigger business, but have that small office feel. So when you come in, we're not seeing a bunch of patients every day. We want that front desk person to be the same front desk person you see. They know about your soccer tournament last weekend. They can talk about that. The doctor is going to be the same doctor you see every time, because we want to keep our doctors, and we have opportunities for them to buy into our practice. And then our staff is our team that are our assistants or whatever level of team member that they are going to be the same. You see them all the time. So the patient comes in and they see the same people. There's something beautiful there that I think is important. And we try hard. That's our goal, right? And we have turnover, and we have things that happen. But at the end of the day, I think the patients deserve that. They spend a lot lot of money for what they do in orthodontics. But I think that there's a different model out there, and I love that you're building, and I love that you're putting your neck out there. It's probably scary.
Very scary. It's very expensive.
But you're doing the right thing. If you know it's right and you get the right people, it's like I said, beautiful.
And even as we're talking on the loneliness component, between the teams alone, to me, it's such a big problem, because at the end of the day, we spend so much time at work, especially people within the dentist industry. They spend a lot of time at work. Sometimes they'll go in there at 7 a.m. and they're staying till 6 p.m. Even to my wife, most of it's, she doesn't build, friendships at work, because she knows that they're not going to stay long.
That's too bad.
Which is so sad. I'm almost like, you spend so much time at work, but she enjoys being there, because she doesn't trust the boss that he would go out of his way to build relationships. Sounds like she needs to
come work with us.
Literally, I've been telling her, hey, you need to get out of this specialist.
If whoever she's working for is listening, I don't know.
I've been telling her, you need to get out of the specialist industry. Just go to the general or something, because she cares so much about people, and she's just one of many other people that are in the health space or the human longevity space, I try to call it, because at the end of the day, it's the human body. I do have a question for you, because I know with the method that you use when it comes to building teams and making sure that you can build opportunities for your doctors to grow with you. I think that's a very beautiful thing. But I do want to know, what's the cost of you just building such a massive, dental operation where you have 23 locations. And I know it comes with a lot of risk as well. And I'm wondering, is there any cost to you? Maybe on a mental level? Well,
sure. I mean, I think you have to be a little bit crazy to do everything that we've done. And it's not because, and I'm not, like I said, not that bright. And so, you end up making a lot of mistakes. So the costs are really, moving forward with something and making errors before they're errors, and having to then backtrack. It happens a lot.
Story of my life.
But I feel very blessed and grateful and lucky to, number one, live in a wonderful country and that provides opportunity for people, for all people. And I was blessed to be born to a couple that, provided a wonderful life for me, and a dad that led me in the professional way. My mom's actually a mental health provider, so
wow. Shout out to mom.
Yeah, she's got a PhD at 60, which she's going to talk about being inspiring.
Wow, that's amazing.
She taught at Mid-American Nazarene for many years as a professor in the play therapy space, and so she helps kids kind of work through stuff.
Oh yeah, I love play therapy, by the way.
Yeah, I need some play therapy.
I'm like in there playing with the sand, and then my son is like, "That's my toy." I was like, "No, that's my toy now. I'm the captain."
That's right. Well, so
that's amazing.
I was lucky, and not everybody's lucky, and I was able to go to some great schools, and I was able to have a practice to come back to.
Right.
And so I can't say that I did everything on my own, and I want to say that there's some risks I took when we ultimately started to grow, because that was cost. It was a lot of loans. It was
right.
We didn't have just a bunch of money sitting in the bank that we're just going to go put to these practices. You're taking loans out, so I have to have good relationships with our banker, and and that is risky, but it's also as a doctor, as a dentist, that doesn't have a lot of background in finance. Like I needed to develop that relationship with the person, to have them teach me, like, okay, what do I make sure that so I don't get in trouble here? Right. And so fortunately that hasn't been a problem. But the idea of how many offices, where to put them, where to buy, I made so many bad business purchases in terms of just offices that I shouldn't have bought or overspent for. And my ego was so big that I knew that we could turn those practices around and ultimately make them make money. Right. But we have some offices in our group that aren't making money, right? And so then it becomes a question of, okay, what are we doing wrong? Right. How can we better serve that community? Are we doing something that's preventing people from coming in? Are we not open enough? And so the idea of cost it's not just money cost. That is definitely a cost. That's definitely a cost. But it's the time that you sit and when I'm supposed to be spending time with my wife on the couch watching a show together and being having a conversation about what's going on there, my head goes down rabbit holes. And just like, okay, why isn't this happening? What are we doing wrong here? How can we do a better job here? And I think you have to facilitate that somehow. And there is cost of being mentally kind of detached from your family in the evenings. Right. And I've had to really actively try to not be that way, because I have 3 wonderful kids, and one's in college, one's about to go to college, one's 14, and I have an awesome wife. We've been married 23 years, and so it's a battle to make sure that I give time where it needs to be. So there's those costs if you allow them to be costs.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that's a total answer to your question about cost, but I think it's really not the money. It's at least in dentistry. I think if you go out and you do a higher risk, let's say a restaurant, for example, which has horrible cash flow and really struggles to make money, and you build too many of them, it can bankrupt you really quickly. Oh yeah. Dentistry, you just have to go out and do good work for people, and be good to your team, be good to your patients, and do the right work, and generally you're going to do okay.
No, absolutely, yeah, and the reason why I asked that question is because normally, I have this opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and then I notice that, they take such huge risk, but then they're so used to taking risks that they don't, take time to even evaluate the cost of all this risk. And when I say cost, it's not always like on a negative, aspect. It's just to kind of talk about it and hear yourself talking about it. Yeah.
There's an opportunity cost for me that's lost if I don't grow too. And I think if there was a couple of years ago, I entertained the idea of joining one of these private equity backed groups, and it would have been great. Like they would have paid me a lot of money for my practices, and at 45 at the time, and I'm thinking, okay, well, do I want to work for this company? And so there would have been an opportunity for me to say, you know what, this is so costly at this stage. I don't know exactly. I'm making a lot of mistakes, and maybe some offices I shouldn't have done this or that. But should I do it? And at the end of the day, the opportunity cost that would have happened had I sold our practices and then gone and worked for this group, is my own joy and fulfillment
your
by growing
independence.
things. And so, people make big risks. And I think most orthodontists would look at what we've built and say, wow, that guy's crazy, because there's a lot of risk there. But
Right.
like you said, I don't, you do a couple at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and then you figure that out, and then you do some more, and then you figure it out, and you make some mistakes, and then you go back. At the end of the day, as long as you take care of patients,
Right.
as long as you do great work,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you take care of your team,
Right.
everything else is going to sort itself out.
Indeed.
And so I'm probably a little bit less risk averse than
Mm-hmm.
most, but I think about it all the time. Like, am I going to sink the business? These people rely on me for their jobs. Like, are they not going to have jobs? Like, I mean,
Right.
it's a big, scary risk.
Especially with the amount of locations that you have.
Right.
Yeah. And and I asked you this question because, I did talk to, like one of my guests, he shared, he buys companies in bulk, like all over the US. And one of the things that we talked about, which I think you made the right, decision to not, give away your company and then work in the company instead of you working for the people that you're bringing in, the clients. As there is some, a lot of grief happens when someone who leads an operation, leads a company, decides to sell. And then now the rest of the body of the company, like the management, the team, the partners that you've established, a lot of grief happens that is usually not talked about very often. So, and I'm coming from a place of zero, awareness into your operation, because I know, you probably have good reasons as to why you wanted to sell everything, but then you decided, you know what, I'm just going to hold on to this and just build it myself, which I think is a great choice because I'm biased.
Thank you. I'm biased too, because that was my decision. So I think it was the right call. But I think it's there is that grief. There's grief. There's lots of opportunities for grief.
Right.
There's grief if you make a bad deal. There's grief if you miss a good deal.
Right.
But I think that you can't. What I want to leave, and I think that this is maybe the heart of it, is that if you think about what makes great businesses great, and Jim Collins wrote a great book on this, Good to Great, and the idea of building a business that can have the leader ultimately transition a new leader in that doesn't then skip a beat.
Right.
That's the key of that's the key of a great business. It's a key great leader. And so what I'm trying to build, and what I've been trying to build even over the last 10 years, is I'm trying to build this self-sustaining company that isn't beholden to some external private equity cycle, just to be frank, that we as doctors maintain the quality of the business itself, and it's self-sustaining, so that young doctors graduating can buy in. They can have their own equity. Okay. They can, we can grow to a space where we can decide to keep growing or not grow. And then I become less relevant. To be honest, it allows me to then say, okay, you know what? I've built something that's going to continue on. And it's not about it continuing on for my legacy, but for the legacy of why you built it. Like you raise your kids so that they'll go off in the world and be good and do good works for the world. Like, I want to build a business that can go off and continue doing great work once I'm gone. And I think it's not so that my name can be on it and I can say, oh, what a great leader he was. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what you're building. And so for me, I just think that's the art of trying to build something great. And so that's the goal.
No, yeah, I mean, I feel like we have a lot of, like things in common. I also grew up with my dad, where he would, he took me to all of his meetings. I've met people from Saudi, like all these really wealthy individuals, and I'm always just there to eat food because I was a kid. I was just excited to just travel with my parents and just eat for free, and just experience things. But I'm sure that played in your decision to like keep going, because you were doing it for something bigger, even though, that can be very cliche sometimes. I'm doing it for a greater good.
Well, but let me tell you where I was at that time. And this is an interesting discussion, because we'd gone from 2010, where there were 3 offices, and then we decided to open a new one. We grew, and then we had added more. And eventually we were up to 13 offices, and then we had to kind of branch. I felt like that we needed to figure out how to be outside of Kansas City. And we did a St. Louis practice that my hubris told me it was going to just be a home run. I knew exactly how to do it, and we started it and didn't do it very well, and it struggled, and it didn't work. And so then we added some Arizona offices with a doctor that had worked here and for 7 years. She was my doctor that was run alongside me in 2007, 8, 9, and 10 when we were kind of at this spot. And she decided to go to warmer weather, and she wanted to do a similar deal. So she wanted to have equity, and so wanted our services. And so I felt like this was the play, but I was struggling with this St. Louis thing.
Right.
And so then the one in Arizona she was a rock star. Like, she went out and marketed well, it grew, and she worked really hard. We had services that helped her. It was great. And then we decided to do a North Carolina deal, which it kind of was faltering a little bit like the St. Louis one. And I'm sitting here with this thinking, I clearly don't have a really good idea of what I'm doing.
Right.
To be honest, I think, okay, well, she's doing great, but it's really because of her. I kind of did these other deals more personally, and I wasn't really thriving. So at that stage, when I was thinking about selling, I was like, I just am lost. Like, I was rudderless. I was thinking, for me personally, you have to be vulnerable at some point. You have to be humble. You have to say, you know what? I don't know why I'm not good at this right now, because I was able to go from here to here. But what's going to take me, say, and the numbers of offices is completely irrelevant, but it's like just a way to keep score. So you say, okay, I went from 3 to 20, but there's no way I'm going to go from 20 to 50 because I can't figure out that 50, right? I can't figure out how to go. 20, we're kind of struggling. And so I had to then decide, have I built all I can build, and then sell it, let somebody else, bigger PE group go and put a bunch of money into it and solve it that way? Right. Or can I figure a way out of this? And ultimately I brought in a friend of mine that I'd worked with before. He's actually from Northeast, from Massachusetts. And he was a very pivotal member he was a part of a group we were trying to kind of figure out this whole joining practices way back before it was really cool, and ended up not doing a deal, but I learned a lot from this guy. And his name is Vin Cardillo, and I knew he understood operations better than me. I knew he could come in and see the matrix that I couldn't see and help me become a better leader. And so that was I could either sell, take my money in, I'd still have to work, right? I wasn't going to run, but still maintain for Orthodontics, but really not do anything else really on my own, or bring in somebody that can teach me what I need to learn, and then maybe do something collectively with him. And so that's really where Catalyst Dental Partners came from, was his experience of scaling general dentistry practices. And he knew the private equity world because he had been in that a lot, and he didn't have a ton of favorable things to say about that space because it can get ugly. And so he's like, we need to build this. And so that's the path we're on now. I think the theme that I would want to convey is humility as a leader. Like, you have to say, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need help. And whether it's going to get an MBA or, bringing in somebody that knows more and maybe partnering with them, partnerships are tough and you got to be careful with them. But I think that there's something that's been really exciting for me now, because I see the new building light. I can see where we're going, and I can see how I'm going to contribute and what I'm good at. And having brought in a partner that is ultimately knows the things that I'm not good at, and vice versa. So it's you just have those kind of inflection points in your business or in your life where you're saying, okay, well, something's off. How do we get better? And it requires you to check yourself and get better. One way or the other, you're going to have to get better, whether it's transitioning something else or bringing somebody in, whatever. But for me, it was that decision that solved that issue for me. And that issue was being, just sure that I wasn't doing it right.
I saw a video of the CEO of LinkedIn, and he was talking about, just great leaders. He's like, and I don't like a lot of big CEOs, but he's one of the CEOs that I actually like, because he, even though, he grew up in a very well-off family, but he was very, engaged in social justice. So I, look up to him in some way, not like in any grandiose way, but just the words that he says, I can tell that he's a genuine guy. Hopefully I'll have him on this podcast someday. But he talked about how great leaders are, always yearning to learn, and then always knowing when to recruit the right person, and they know when to humble themselves. They know when to say that I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Until today, every now and then he'll say, I have no idea what I'm doing at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I just grew a company and I had all these amazing people around me and they all tell me I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And I wake up and I'm just like, hopefully they don't find out.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's true. And it's true. And obviously it's not true. I mean,
yes.
he's done
amazing.
And I think the same thing, but it does require, it requires something that some leaders or perceived leaders don't have. And you know these people, right?
Right.
It's people that are always right. The people that,
Yeah.
they've never done anything wrong. And it's like, yeah, it's off-putting from the beginning. And, there's a certain trait there, whether it's machismo or something where they can't just humble themselves. But to me, thank God, I hope I'm perceived as someone that is not that way. I mean, there's times I get very dogmatic. I mean, I know certain things about the way things orthodontically should be, but at the end of the day, I think it's a hard balance, especially when you're filled with a profession, and dentistry is this, where you've been told your entire life that you're really good, you're really smart, you've done really well in school, you just keep growing, and then you keep growing in academia with everybody telling you you're great and you've all got 4.0s forever, and then you graduate, and then you get thrown out into the world and you think you got to put on this face of perfection.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay to not be perfect. I'm definitely not.
Right. No, yeah, thanks for that. Because a lot of, people with the doctors, it's really hard for them to admit that. Especially with the white coat. I feel like it comes with so much pressure. The moment you put it on.
It gets worse in medicine.
You have to be perfect because people's life are at stake.
That's exactly right. Stakes are high. Stakes are high in medicine. Unfortunately, I don't deal with blood and guts. I just got to move teeth around. So that's
I think it's still the same because the amount of pain that people experience with sometimes with decayed teeth.
Well, I don't want to diminish. I don't want to diminish my profession, but at the end of the day, orthodontics is really easy compared to most other dental specialties, and definitely much easier than medicine. Having somebody's life on the line that's serious. We're solving some problems for people, but we make people have wonderful smiles, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not life or death.
Huge, add-on to the human dignity. Just helping someone smile. As simple as it sounds, it just takes someone to a whole new level.
Well,
so thank you guys.
I've dedicated my life to that, so I appreciate you saying it. Our tagline is "Your smile is just the start," and the whole idea. I believe smiles, and it means multiple things, but you're providing smiles for people in hopes that they're paying us to make sure that they can have a smile that they can then take them to the next level for something else. I also look at it as smiles just to start for our team. Like the smiles that we create is just a start for their careers so that they can turn this into a profession and not a job. I think, the difference I think that what my dad had tried to create and did create and what we've tried to take on is this idea of, you're not coming in at a minimum wage job as a first or second job, working a little bit and then going and doing something else.
Right.
And dentistry, at least orthodontics, was that way for many years. And there was no real professional growth. You get to a spot, if you were that example of one doctor office, one doctor, 3 or 4 staff members, how much growth can that person ultimately take on before they're pretty tapped out? You really can't pay them that much more money. You can't enrich their lives financially, professionally, educationally as much as you could if you maybe were bigger. And so if there is an advantage of being bigger, and this is actually, I get this question a lot. I got it a lot around 2013 as we were starting to grow. It's like, what in the world are you doing? Why are you doing this? Right. And I'll be honest, it was originally a money play. More offices, more money, there's more value. Right. I'm going to admit that we do business to make money, right? But as I saw us grow, number one, we were making less money at the end of the year, which was interesting. There's story there. As you grow, you burn cash. But I was more excited because what happened was I had these wonderful people working in our business who had been working there with 3 offices for years and years. And as we added, say, 6 offices and we doubled in size, now all of a sudden we had need for leaders. We had need for trainers. We had need for people to grow out of that role into something else. And as we got bigger, we needed to pay them more, and we needed to help them and educate them. And what I saw was you have this entry-level employee that comes in at some level and say $15 an hour, and now they're making $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, $80,000 a year. And it's pretty, for me, that's where I saw the joy in growth. There's problems with being too big, but there's also opportunities for people that are within your business that as long as you have a pathway for that, and I believe in that 100%. And I look at my top leadership. We've hired some of the more finance heavy people, and I brought in this guy from Massachusetts to help me with my operations. But my operations leaders are all grown from within. It's exciting to see that, and I think that's why people I think want to come work for a business like ours, because they know that they can become something else. And I cherish that. I think that's the reason that we've done what we've done in terms of at least the philosophic growth that we've been on the march for. Right.
No, like even back to Heliona, one of the reasons why I decided to go for it and then added like a different product is because a lot of employees are always passed on when it comes to like promotions. Like they'll lose a manager, or a manager become an executive, and they bring someone else outside. And internally, these employees are like, what the heck? I can do this.
Exactly.
And now they bring in someone, overpaying them. I have to train that person. And that happens in the dentist space all the time.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I do not even interview somebody that works in another dental office. There's a couple of reasons. Number one is there's very few dentist offices out there that do things in regards to the way that we facilitate change in our office, the Kaizen principles. But there's also biases. They come in, and like you said, your current team then has to train them do our way, and it's hard to make that work. Plus, it's just not good business. It's not good idea to take other people from other offices, right? I mean, that's especially say a doctor or anybody that's working in another office. And so if somebody wants to leave an office, I feel bad for that office, but I feel bad for that person that they want to leave, but I'm not going to hire them unless they're no longer working for a dentist. It's just something that, anyway, I believe that from a cultural perspective, we should all do that as dentists, but I think it's also from an operations perspective. I want people to grow from within. And instead of bringing in people that, maybe, not that I don't want somebody that's trained from another person. That's an egotistical thing to say, but I think if I start them from a cultural perspective at day one as a, say, more entry-level employee, there's so much that they're going to learn once they get to that spot that I might hire another assistant, that person will not have. They'll be missed. And so I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for sure. And, we're getting to the end of it, and it's so funny because I've only asked 3 questions so far. I have like 8 more to go, but, that will be part 2.
We can do a rapid fire. I'll just 2-word answers.
No, this question deserves a lot of breakdown. But, we'll definitely have a part 2 for sure, where, we can go deeper, because I would love to go deeper into those. But there's one question that I want to ask you, though, from my many list. This one is a more lighter question, and it's more like a good ego metric. I saw that you guys were like best place for work in Kansas City, and one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, I did a little bit of research because I saw that best place to work. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I looked into it, and a bunch of the employees, people that have worked for you or that are working for you, they all had one thing they had in common, was like you care. And me, the reason why I call myself the Chief Empathy Officer, is to be able to find leaders that have their clients and people, partners saying the same thing about them, which is either being empathetic, being caring, because I think we're missing that in like executive roles, and I try to champion them and then give them an opportunity just to humanize them, just have them also share their story. So again, thank you for that.
Well, but first, let me say, that gave me chills when you said that. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
No, yeah, it was mind blowing, because normally you'll have the customer facing saying good things, and the employees are not saying the best thing. But with you, I saw that they're like, like Jeremy cares a lot, and I was like, oh, okay. I did call one person,
well,
because that's how I researched.
Oh wow, okay, awesome.
I called one person. I'm not gonna say their name,
because
she was like, don't tell her I said this. They like talked about just your love for football. I talked to another partner who shared that you would even come during game days, and and then you wear a jersey even though it's not your state. And I was like, oh, okay, well this guy is pretty cool. And I try to give people opportunities to share. But as you on a personal level, and I know this work is really hard, especially being an entrepreneur in the dental field and then doing the work that you do. And I believe that we should take a moment to enjoy those little wins, like the best place for work. Because that, do you know how hard it is for a body of a company to say, I like my boss? It's not very common, but you have that.
Thank you.
And I want to hear, like, how does that make you feel on an individual level and then also as a leader?
Well, I told you how it made me feel. I got chills and almost kind of teared up. It was, I think that there's only one way to go, and it's just to continue to try to get better. And I think winning and we didn't win. We were nominated for best places to work, and the Kansas City Business Journal does a wonderful job of that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you though, the humbling part of it is that we won it only once, and we've done it more than once, and so. And when you get to that place where you realize, okay, wait a second, maybe we're stubbing our toe here. Maybe we're not taking as good a care of our people as we should.
Yeah.
It has to be ongoing. We can't have won it once
and
think that we're awesome, right? Like we have to keep working at it. And so there are companies out there and people that I look up to who win it every year. And so I look to them and say, okay, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And so I think that wasn't your question. It was, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel good that year that we did well for those people. There's people now on our team that we're not doing as well as we did back then because we're not winning it. So then it becomes, okay, how do we get better? And so we have to continue to improve. And this goes to a little bit of what I mentioned earlier about the Kaizen process. And Kaizen is this idea of small continual changes all the time. If you in your business kind of do status quo work all the time, you're going to be fine if you're a good business person, good leader, whatever. But if you don't find ways for not just the leaders to make change, not just to come down from on high and say, we're going to do this different. If it bubbles from underneath, where every little thing that needs to be changed throughout a day, whether it's, we need to put the mirror here on this desk when we're going to see a patient because it saves us time doing this. I mean, just simple stuff. If you build that into your culture where everybody is always looking for ways we can improve. Number one, it forces everybody to use their brain and think about it, and they're engaged in their work environment and they're happy with what they're doing because they're building it. But then it makes these sorts of questions about taking care of people in your team and the words of what our team may say about us. It allows us when we need to make a change and we need to improve because we didn't win it this year, right? So it says, okay, now let's try to implement a new change, and that change is better accepted when you have that culture of smaller changes. And so I guess it makes me feel great. I'm humbled that you said it, and whomever you talked to said what they said. But I think it is important to know that we're never done. We have to continue to do that. We have to have a system in place to make sure we take care of people. And you can't make a system for caring for people, but you can sure care about people and make sure that the systems are set up right to make sure they know it. And that's what I hope to continue to do. And I believe we do great things for our team. I also think we screw up sometimes. It's okay. We're going to get better. And
it's a balance, and you were in the right, on both sides of the balance. You were learning and you were experimenting, and then you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and then, becoming a vehicle for empathy.
Thanks.
I think you're doing a really good job, and I want to say thank you, and I want you to enjoy this little accolade because it's a hard job. It's a hard job to wake up every day, and wanting to build something. No matter how hard it is, especially as a family man, you have kids, but now you're building this entire community of individuals that you're bringing along and supporting their family and vice versa. So
thank you.
So thank you for that. Wow. I'm definitely gonna bring you again for part 2 because I have so many questions, even to the Kaizen, how did you call it? The Kaizen principle you mentioned. I wanted to ask you about that because I love the name, number one, and I love the principle itself. But we're going to reserve that. I'm going to go to my closing question.
Sure.
We've talked about a lot today, and this is the first time we've met. So thank you for being vulnerable and then being open to even answer my questions. But one thing I notice when it comes to leaders is we tend to not talk about ourselves, which I've been trying to make you do today, but you always go back to just saying just your team, your people, and all of your partners. But I want to know, after everything we've talked about today, how's your spirit right now? Yeah.
My spirit is, I think spirit is good, easy answer. But I think the hard answer is I'm in a pressure cooker right now with this new company. So my spirit is hopeful because I enjoy building things. So I'm at that spot, I'm very happy. But I think that there's always fear. And I think, this year has actually been a really interesting year from a business perspective. I think the economy's hit here very kind of quietly. Nobody's really talking much about the lack of discretionary income that people are having. We've talked about prices being high. We've talked about this, but the inflation plus whatever has been happening in the economy is, I think, much worse than we really have talked much about. I want to believe that because I don't want to believe it's us. The business is a little bit off, but I think at the end of the day, we have to look at both. And so for me, the spirit part of it is, what can I do to make sure that the downturn in the economy or the business or whatever's going on isn't a systemic problem that is something I'm taking my eye off the ball. So I'm worried in terms of where we are there. So I'm hopeful on the bigger scale stuff. On the smaller scale stuff, I still have to live in the weeds a bit and understand, okay, what's going on here, and are we making sure we're taking care of patients well? Are we taking care of our team well? All this stuff that we've been talking about all day. So I'm hopeful, and I'm also very consciously aware that there's something else going on, and so I'm a little bit nervous isn't the right word. It just
cautious.
Maybe just cautious to make sure that we're doing the right stuff. So it sounds kind of a little negative. I'm actually I love my family's doing well. I got a daughter home from college. She brought her boyfriend. It was great. She I texted her. No, I called her on the way here, and she was looking at her first car. First car since she bought a beater when she was young, and it went kaput. She's now at college without a car, so she's looking at a car. So I called her. I'm like, hey, so how'd it go? And she's like, oh, I really like it. She wants to get a Tacoma truck of all things. She's 20 years old. And she, I said, I'm going to this podcast. And I haven't met this guy before. And I don't really know what to say. And she's like, oh, Dad, don't worry. Nobody's better at talking about themselves than you. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of so at the end of the day though, I laugh because it's like, okay, she thinks I talk about myself a lot. But I think I'm happy that she's home. I'm happy that my daughter is going off to college. My middle daughter's going off to college, and my son, I'm worried about him. So spirit wise, okay, he's got to get better in school. And but my wife and I are doing wonderful. So I think the hardcore, most important things in my life, my family are great. My parents are good. They're healthy. My friends are doing well. So I'm very grateful this time of year, especially. I love Christmas time. And I think I want to convey from a spiritual perspective, all this other stuff. I'm just grateful. And I'm grateful that you invited me. I'm grateful for all the conversation. And I think as humans, as business people, as leaders, if we can just take a step back sometimes, and no matter what else is going on in the business or really even in the family, and just think about how damn lucky we are to live in this country, to be able to have these conversations openly, to be able to be vulnerable with other people, and to really have the blessings that we have. I think the world would be a better place if we all just sat back and were grateful. So I'm ultimately, my spirit is grateful. Gratitude.
Well, thank you for that. I have so many questions just pop up in my head, but I'm not going to violate my own rule, which is after the closing question, we end the discussion.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to have talked to you. As my daughter says, I love talking about myself. So.
Hey, you did a great job. Even the closing question was supposed to be about yourself, and you talked about everyone else, and then give them props, and So again, thank you so much for taking time and being here today.
Sure.
I look forward to having you, and I'm gonna ask the rest of the questions.
Awesome. I love it.
You take care.
All right, man. Thanks.
And in closing, I want to leave you with a question. Do you have 2 to 4 leaders in your company who, if they left, would cause a lasting impact on your business? If your answer is yes, then it's time to invest in them. Not just professionally, but personally. Because here's the truth. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about showing up with empathy, clarity, and intention. So, I want you to know this. You are capable, you are resilient, and your presence as a leader matters. Thank you for joining me on Heliona Insight. Until next time, stay present, stay hopeful, and let's keep building workplaces where everyone feels valued and inspired to thrive.